Hello everyone, Alok here. I'm going to share something. I don't know if there's anything else more important I can share with you. What I believe is the finest poem in the English language. It's Sonnet 29 by Shakespeare. It doesn't have a title, but you could use the first line as the title. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes. And I think this is the finest poem in the English language. One, there's unfortunately not a lot of competition. Um, Poetry from the Middle East and Asia is really fantastic. I think English language poetry is really not very good, particularly English as in England and Great Britain. Poetry, um, it's poetry that it's an acquired taste, and it doesn't really seem to be a lot of ideas here. So I don't know why someone would really acquire this taste. It's poetry that's not in the vernacular. It's kind of ornate, artificial, and so I think for a lot of people in English speaking countries may get turned off by that poetry, and that's why folks are not as into poetry. Unfortunately, in the United States or the UK, as much as they are to this day in the Middle East and in Asia. That being said, poetry was a lot more popular in say the United States 100 years ago. There, no one there was not as many competing art forms, but I believe there was a new poem every day on the front page of the New York Times, and so poetry was more important. Um, but hopefully, you could begin to appreciate some poetry and some English language poetry with this sonnet. So the sonnet is pretty amazing. I think what's really extraordinary about it are really two things, um, which are kind of the same thing. That the change that goes on in the poem, I don't know if you have that kind of a change and that kind of breadth in terms of extremes, the extreme emotions that you feel in that poem. It's just extraordinary, and that you can do it with such economy that you start with this real despair from this pit of despair, and then by the end of the poetry, you're in a feeling of just elation, almost jubilation, real contentment. Um, so really extreme emotions that you feel thanks to uh, Shakespeare's sonnet, but in just 14 lines. So that kind of economy that you can express that kind of change as well as such strong and such extreme emotions. So it's something that I don't know that any other poem in the English language or any other language is done, and with that kind of range, those kinds of extreme emotions that you feel that have been expressed with such economy. So I think this is the finest English language poems, and one of the great experiences that one can have appreciating this poem. So I'll read this poem for you. You could read a few times, and I can talk a little bit more about it. But really, if you just keep reading about it a few more times, I think you will really, really appreciate it. So with Shakespeare, Sonnet 29.